The future is ever-changing. Communities, jobs, and economies are continually being transformed. This is why we need incredible minds to connect problems with innovative solutions, to disrupt and create new industries, to enable businesses to think sustainably, to shape evidence-based leaders and the next generation of visionaries. SALCC helps you to shape your career. Your passion is calling. Your future is standing by. Tap into your potential. Virtual and on-site classes, dedicated faculty, diverse student experiences, and highly recognized programs. Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. Apply today and fast-track your career.
Hello everyone, and welcome once again to another hour with the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. It's great as usual to be here with you, giving you information that is pertinent to your higher education and future-proofing your career. My name is Natalie Jolie-Fanis, and as usual, it was his brainchild, and he's here to review it and give us all of the pillars and successes that were part of that festival. As usual, we are based on the pillars of sustainability, innovation, entrepreneurship, and the college is really doing a lot to put our shoulder to the wheel and really roll this out in a very practical way. So we'll be speaking a little more about that in a little while. Last week we spoke to, or 2 weeks ago as a matter of fact, we spoke to one of our staff members who I thought had a little hidden secret. We didn't place much emphasis on the library, and we have a little unknown place at Sir Arthur that we want to speak about today. So my other colleague is going to tell you about the SALCC farm. Yes, if you did not know, Sir Arthur Lewis does have a farm where a lot of work is being done, and there's so much promise coming out of that farm. So I'm so happy to be joined by one of the officers from the farm. But as I said, we want to start off speaking about the festival. I have one reminder before we get into that. As I speak about future-proofing your career, we are still open to receive applications to the bachelor's degree programs in environmental studies and sustainability, in hospitality and tourism, in our business studies and innovation, and also in public health. So if any of these areas interest you, if you're looking to make your career path in any of these areas, please visit our website salcc.edu.lc and fill in that application. There is still time. Applications for these particular programs are open till the end of the month. So make sure you take that next step. Stay in touch with us. Find out what the requirements are. You can visit our social media pages and put your questions in there, as well as on our WhatsApp platform. So please find out how we can help you develop yourself. So now I'm going to get into our Thought Festival, which we hosted just last week, Tuesday, June 15th. And with me today to speak about that is the Principal President of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Dr. Keith Nurse. He will be speaking to Unthink, but also joining us today is Mr. St. George James. And Mr. James is the Technical Officer at the SALCC farm, and he will be telling us a little bit about himself and about the farm. But let's start with Dr. Nurse. Dr. Nurse, thank you for joining me and welcome once again here. I know the NTN Studios is no stranger to you. You've been here quite a few times, and you were here speaking to Jesse before the festival. So we've already declared it a success given the numbers that we reached, the number of participants we had, experts in their fields from over 10 countries. Can you just tell us your feelings about how the festival went last week?
Great, thank you very much, Natalie. It's always a pleasure to be here at NTN. It's a special place.
Definitely.
I think it was the first place I got the opportunity to be on television in St. Lucia. So again, thanks to the staff at NTN for inviting us to participate and share some of the good news and good stories coming from the college. Unthink is one of those recent good news stories. Really, in many respects, we really wanted to give back to St. Lucia and to the world some of what Arthur Lewis had generated in terms of knowledge and perspectives. Many of his ideas, particularly in relation to economic history and economic change, are very pertinent and relevant today. Much of his work is really focused on understanding how developing countries respond to the global context and the changes in the global economy. So, for example, in his magnum opus, his last book, which is entitled Growth and Fluctuations, he speaks about how the global economic recession, depression of the late 19th century, as well as in the 1930s, had a specific impact on developing countries. So, for example, he estimates that there's a 15 to 20 year lag between when the developed countries recover from a crisis and when the developing countries recover. Mm-hmm. So if he's correct and is applicable today, then the COVID-19 crisis will have some long legs. And so we have to think about how do we plan for that rather than being surprised by it. Okay. So in many respects, we try to capture some of those things on specific themes like Caribbean futures. Then we had a panel focused on climate action, again, really critical for small island developing states. And then we followed that up with a panel on the fourth industrial revolution. So technological change is one of the key things that Lewis talks about. In fact, in the last page of his last book, he talks about that trade is not the engine of growth. It is actually technology and productive change. And then we rounded that off with a focus on the creative industries, which was followed by a panel in the evening on youth and social entrepreneurship, which was in prime time.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
And did get a very large audience in St. Lucia, and has gotten a lot of coverage as well overseas through the online platforms.
Dr. Nash, just in case our audience does not know, it almost sounded like we were in a classroom getting a lecture about Lewis's work. So it's obvious that you're a student of Lewis, but could you just give the audience a little background of how you are so savvy about Lewis's theories?
How did I come to be so savvy about it? Well, it's about one day walking down the shelves in the library at the St. Augustine campus of UWI while I was working on my PhD thesis, and struggling to figure out what to write, and there was Lewis's book popping out at me. So I actually read a bit of it right there at the library, borrowed it, took it home, read it, and the rest is history. No pun intended. I think the key point is this, and this is where I actually have a little bit of a different opinion from a lot of my colleagues who we were at the time schooled on Lewis, largely through the critique of his work on the industrialization of the British West Indies. Because in it, he does make the argument that the region needs to depend increasingly on foreign direct investment. And that's what was critiqued. But when you read his work more expansively, what he's arguing is that in developing countries, particularly small states like our own, the entrepreneurial culture is not very strong. And one can argue that it still is the case today.
Still is the case, yeah.
That our institutions are very risk averse and are not prepared to invest in technology and are not prepared to invest in shifting the economies away from their traditional moorings. And so he felt that the next best option is foreign direct investment. Now one can argue that his perspective at that point in time is actually still valid today, because most developing countries, and in the Caribbean in particular, our level of investment in research and development is absolutely abysmal. In fact, it doesn't even blip on the radar curve. So the country that spends the most on research and development in the region is Trinidad and Tobago, my home country, and it only accounts for 1/4% of the GDP. Now, what is recommended is somewhere between 1% and 2% of GDP for developing countries. So Trinidad, which has a lot of resources, and the human resources and the institutions, is under-investing massively. So then you multiply that phenomenon across the Caribbean, and it explains why we have the highest level of indebtedness of all developing country regions. It also explains why we have the highest outward migration of talent of all regions in the world. It probably also explains why we have the highest level of chronic non-communicable diseases in the world, because we have the largest food import bill, and the list goes on. So the Caribbean is not doing well, and it's because we are not investing enough in thinking about our future. Hence the rationale for unthinking, for us to start questioning in a more deep way what are the fundamentals of our existence. Climate change is making that abundantly clear, and COVID has made that even more poignant. And so our vulnerabilities and fragilities are being, put out. So the region that has the highest death rate and the highest incidence of COVID in the world is Latin America and the Caribbean. The region that's probably going to have the longest overhang from COVID is probably going to be Latin America and the Caribbean, because this is the region with the highest level of inequality of all regions in the world. So, yeah. And all of this Lewis talked about voluminously in his work, but we haven't been investing in deepening his argument, doing the kind of research in economics and politics and sociology and so on to advance the agenda. And so that's what we want to do. So Unthink is not just a festival,
right,
and a one-off. We're actually going to be building out a number of other both events and initiatives. So for example, we are just about to launch our student essay competition, for which there are prizes. We have cash prizes, and we actually have prizes that includes tablets and so on. Right? You'll get more details on that.
Yeah.
Then we also want to do like a multimedia, new media competition as well, with animation. And so it's to bring Lewis's works alive through the eyes of young people. And that's what we want to do next.
In addition to that, based on the festival itself and bringing all those thought leaders, how are we going to piggyback on what has happened during the festival itself in terms of documentation, and even persons being able to revisit what was discussed, that discussion that has begun, the unthinking that has begun?
Well, there's been strong interest, both domestically and abroad, about us doing something more regular, maybe like a monthly seminar series or something along those lines. Or we want to take it a little bit further, because actually we want to do publications along these lines. So that could be an online magazine, online journal, for example. Who knows, a television production along these lines, and the list goes on. And really, this is an opportune moment. In fact, Lewis always talks about using crises as an opportunity. And so one couldn't find a better crisis to leverage on than this one. So I think that is what we want to focus on going forward.
Okay, great. So we have heard much about Unthink. It was really, really well received, and we want to come back to speak to the SALCC farm, not just the farm in itself, but all of the future plans that we have for the college that includes the farm. So we will take a short break, and when we come back, we meet our technical officer and speak more to Dr. Nurse about some initiatives. Stay with us.
Are you looking to broaden your career opportunities? Future-proof your career with a bachelor's degree from the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. We've introduced new cutting-edge degree programs in Environmental Studies and Sustainability, Tourism and Hospitality, Business Administration, and Public Health. online platforms are making it easier than ever before to further your education. Unmask your competitive advantage. This is the game changer you've been waiting for. Get the highest return on your investment in your ECS from the college you trust. Visit salcc.edu.lc. Apply today for September 2021.
Welcome back to the SALCC Informational Hour. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Natalie Jolie Fanis, and today I am joined by our Principal President, Dr. Keith Nurse, as well as Mr. St. George James, who is the Technical Officer at the farm. So before we left you, we were speaking about a very strong showing that the college put on only last week as we celebrated or memorialized Sir Arthur Lewis and his works through a thought festival that was dubbed Unthink. It was the brainchild of Principal Dr. Keith Nurse, and he just spoke to us about that. Now we want to speak about what I call a well-kept secret at the college. They're a little distance from us at our main campus at Mount Fortune, but we really want to tell the nation all the work that is being done at the college, and no better person to tell us than the person responsible, who has been at the farm for quite a number of years, I understand, St. George. He looks young, you know, they all do, the stuff that has been coming to us. So St. George, start off by telling us about your journey at Sir Arthur Lewis Community College.
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks to the NTN staff. And this is a wonderful privilege for me to be here to begin to disseminate some information about myself, the farm, and where we are heading. My journey started, which I normally say, ending a journey and beginning a dream. So coming out from secondary school, I was enrolled at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College at the Division of Agriculture, where I wanted to begin my dream. Upon successful completion of the agriculture program, I was employed at the farm.
Very nice.
Being at the farm, spent a couple of years at the farm, I decided to pursue higher learning. So I went back again, studied, come back on the farm, and during that time I attended seminars, workshops, and all other little activities they had in improving my skills. At the same time, in 2012, 2013, 2014, and 15, I went to Mexico again on training, and in this time it was in the area of protected agriculture. Upon coming back, my whole mentality of agriculture changed. I was fascinated by what I saw in Mexico, and I came back very excited with all the energy to begin to implement what I learned all the way in Mexico. In doing all of that, I realized that the farm need to come out from what we call traditional, conventional type of farming into more precision agriculture, technology, and research if we have to make a meaningful contribution to the nation and the world at large. After doing all of that, my journey, my dream started, and I began to get more involved in the activities that we have in the farm. So for me, as it stands, my journey, I started working at Sir Arthur, and that's the only place I work in my entire life.
Wow.
And I have been there up till now. It has been a very growing learning, and where I gain a lot of knowledge, experience, especially critical thinking skills, management skills. So the farm, I have learned a lot from the farm. And now I believe I'm in a capacity to begin to dish out and begin to actually all what I've learned to put it into practice.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Tell me, why were you interested in agriculture in the first place?
For me, as a little boy growing up in my community, my parents was involved in agriculture. I always went to the garden, helping with. But one thing that struck me, I had a love for animals, and I decided, okay, because of this, I want to continue in that journey. Okay. So while I was going to school, coming back way back, it was not a very easy journey for me. It was a hard journey. So I had to develop my own plants and rare animals in order to get money to go to school. So it has been a very difficult journey, but now when I sit back and look back, I could say, okay, if it wasn't for all of those things, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I want to thank all those who helped me in my journey to be where I am today.
Great. That sounds very fulfilling. Yeah? That the way it started and that you're able to be where you are today.
Yeah.
So great. So tell us a little more about the farm. What does the farm do? What's the function of the farm in relation to the college?
Okay, function, purpose of the farm. First of all, if we go back and we look at the genesis of the farm, where I think when the division was established, the students, they used to go and visit other farms to do their practicals. So the college didn't have a farm. So at that point, because of the demise of Farmco, the college acquired 49 acres of land in the Mabuya Valley area, and this is where the farm is housed. On this basis, the purpose of the farm is to provide training for students as to what they have learned in the class. They could go back and do all the practicals on the farm. Also, it's a model farm. Model farm in the sense when we adapt to all the new technologies. For example, we have the aquaponics going on farm, the hydroponic system, and research and demonstration plot. All of those things to design the farm, to put the farm above the rest. So at the end of the day, a model farm where people would come in and see what we are doing, and they could go back on the farm and use those technologies to better their holdings or the farm. Also, it has a teaching component. It also have where we allow students, the Form 5 students, to come in. They do the SBA, and I know for now we have moved ahead from all of those things. Thanks again to the principal who brought in an entrepreneurship program, where components of the course where students now could actually go study, get all the practical experience, and now they could go back and develop their own farm.
Okay, great. So I'm hearing that you're saying that the farm is there's a teaching element for the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College students, but also secondary students can also access the farm.
Secondary, they come to do the SBA, CSEC SBA. Also, the farm is open if you want visits to come in. Okay. So we have other groups from Guadeloupe, Martinique, from overseas coming in just to see what is going on. If you are a farmer interested in bettering your farm, you come in to see what we have. For instance, I know we were the first set of people, I think, that grew with the hydroponic system, that we grew our crops in flower pots, in bags, to control the soil-borne disease, waterborne disease, and to have a better production on farm.
Okay. So you are open to, are you an example for other farmers to come in to understand the processes that you use? That's
the main forward, to be an example, to be the leading farm within the nation, and to actually help in the food security of the nation. For instance, if I may elaborate more, it's not just the teaching service that we have. We also have services where we help with food security. We have our outlets where we sell what we produce on farm, which is the eggs, the pork, all the crops. So we sell in the supermarkets, the hotels, and also the public. And we have a thriving market even at the college itself.
Definitely. So as you spoke to the different things that you do, can you tell us what the makeup of the farm is?
The farm has several units. We have what we call livestock and crops unit. The livestock unit is divided into what we have the poultry. Before, when the farm started, we had both broilers, wherein just for meat and also for layers for eggs. So now we just stick with the layers for now. Also, we have the pigs, which we grow it just for pork, where we sell to the supermarkets. We have the small ruminants, also we go for mutton and chevrons, which we sell to the supermarket. Also, we have the aquaculture, which is the fresh tilapia, which we're going back into again. We have our open field production, where we grow our plantain, and we grow crops that we cannot grow in the rainy season. You know, we have two seasons in St. Lucia, the dry seasons and the rainy season. During the rainy season, we cannot grow certain crops outdoor. So we take that opportunity to grow other crops that could thrive within the rainy season. We also have our wind tunnels, and we have the greenhouse where we practice the hydroponic, and now we have the aquaponic system on farm.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to come back to you to raise a point that you spoke to a while ago, but you alluded to Dr. Nurse introducing a new component to our agricultural program, which traditionally was a general agriculture program, and now there's a change to agri-entrepreneurship. Dr. Nurse, can you speak to that, please?
Yes. For the last academic year, we switched around the agriculture program, so it's now entitled Agri-entrepreneurship and Climate Smart Agriculture. And in fact, we have several programs, both in relation to teaching and research, and also to new crop generation. So for example, with the Canadians, we have something called SAGE, Skills to Access the Green Economy. And that's very much focused on generating some new practices in relation to climate change and climate smart agriculture. We're doing that in conjunction with Dalhousie University and what's the name of the college? A college out of Ottawa.
Ottawa.
Yeah, Algonquin College, sorry. And so that's one component that's coming onto the farm in terms of changing our modalities. And St. George could also give us more information, but we're working with the Taiwanese to do some experimental crops particularly melons, if I recall correctly. And so, but we're also doing other things, dragon fruit, and a few other things that are not endemic to this part of the world. So there's a level of experimentation that we are engaged in, and that's the role of the farm. So in effect, the farm is evolving into being what we are calling an innovation farm. Right? Its goal is to actually stretch the competencies beyond what is the traditional. And in that regard, we are trying to strengthen those components. So with the aquaponics in particular, we are hoping to ramp that out some more because we do have some capabilities in that area now, and we want to generate high levels of output and commercialization in this sphere. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that clarification. So I know you spoke to the Taiwanese collaboration, and St. George, can you just expand on that for us?
Okay. Presently, we have the Taiwanese, which came in before. 4 years ago, we had the Taiwanese who came on farm, and they were involved in a lot of activities. That's why we established the dragon fruit plot, and they had other different types of farming systems which they help us with. Presently, we are growing watermelon variety. So they are introducing different varieties of watermelon, and to see how marketable it is to St. Lucia consumers. That has been ongoing on farm. Also, we had fertilizer trials from the Moroccans, going through testing different fertilizers as to how the plant respond to those fertilizers to make a selection which one it is best suitable for that particular area. We also had other collaborations with one of the outlets on liquid fertilizer. And what they would do is provide those fertilizers so that we could use it where we could go more organic, and we could get away from more of the chemical fertilizers, so that we will move in that area. So these, in a nutshell, are some of the things that are ongoing. I know prior we had the potato trials with UE at one time, and all of those things is ongoing. I know that one person is looking at, I had a phone call yesterday, one person is looking at developing the pastures on the farm, which is pasture management as well.
So how does that research now spill over into our communities? I know we teach the students, but do we have any form of documenting, of passing on that information to other institutions? Ministry of Agriculture, for example?
Most of those research and the Taiwanese, we do the documentation. We'll pass it on for our farm. What I'm trying to do now is to try to gather all of those things to put in a publication. So anybody that could go in the library, want to see what specific crop that is grown in that area and how it is doing, they could just go into the library, get the information. And if they are developing farm within that area, so the person already have a head knowledge as to what they are going to do, what they could grow and what they cannot grow. So all of those things are ongoing. We are doing all our documentation now so that we could bring out a publication. And one of the things when I came back from Mexico, it was that same public documentation and publication. We're not doing enough. So as a learning institution, we must go out and document all of those things so people could will be aware of what that is going on the farm.
Okay. When you were speaking to the function earlier, and I know you've touched on it with the Taiwanese, you spoke of the research component. Yeah. Have we discussed all of those, or are there other research areas that you want to touch on?
There are ongoing research areas. I know we have the coconut with Kadi going on very soon. That is in its development stage. I know there are other interests that want to look at growing cocoa, and I know the Taiwanese again want to come in with the pineapple. These are ongoing discussions that we need to get proper dialogue before we move ahead with those research projects, because at the end of the day, we have to see how the public and how the college could benefit out of those research activities.
Okay, excellent. Now you've alluded quite a bit to your experience in Mexico, and one of the things that is sort of like a trademark when you go past the farm are those large greenhouses. That was that in conjunction with the Mexican?
That was in conjunction, and again I was sent to Mexico for all the training for the operational of that greenhouse. But one limitation we have is that when the Mexican donated those greenhouses, it did not come with all the amenities. We know that in St. Lucia we have hot climate, so, and under this greenhouse it is very hot, so the plants cannot do well under the greenhouse. So by extension, we had to add a cooling system in the greenhouse, and that is ongoing. We have not completed that whole structure yet, but however, we will manage to grow certain crops under the greenhouse, which did pretty well in the cooler part of the season and the year.
I guess that's all part of the research then. So it's still ongoing. How are we able to use greenhouses in our climate?
Yeah, it is ongoing. All of those things are ongoing. And for me, I strongly believe that if we get that greenhouse going, that will help us significantly, and it will also improve our whole cash flow within the farm, because those greenhouses in Mexico, I know what they do, they pump in heat. It's easier to pump heat into the greenhouse rather than cooling the greenhouse. So in Mexico, those greenhouses, they only plant it only twice a year, and they grow different variety, indeterminate variety, where you harvest constantly.
What kinds of crops are the best suited to be grown in the greenhouses?
For us, we look at high-end, high-value crops, tomato, pepper, under the greenhouse. Sometimes we go cucumbers, and sometimes, yes, we have the honeydew melons and the cantaloupe as well under the greenhouse. But most likely, what I'm looking at is to grow varieties that farmers do grow in St. Lucia. There was a sweet mini pepper that I introduced under the greenhouse, which did very well, which I want to go back to it. So we're looking at high-value, high-end crops under the greenhouse.
You said earlier that we have 46 acres?
49.
49 acres.
Yeah.
So I am sure there are unused acres still.
There's a lot.
Speak to the future use of the farm space that we still have.
The future, as we said, going forward, we're looking at establishing the coconut production, establishing coconut on farm with Kadi. Also, we are looking at for other meaningful crops that could help us in developing the farm. We also look for partnership with other organizations that will come in, help us, assist us, and also developing the farm to move forward. Presently, we are in conjunction with ICA that is helping us in guiding us as to how we should bring the farm forward. And I strongly believe there is a place for the farm in terms of food security. We look at what COVID pandemic did. It bring everybody back to go to the backyard gardening.
Yep.
So food security for one, and to the development of agriculture, especially when it comes into technology. And as our new logo will have innovation, sustainable entrepreneurship. So I believe because of those developments that is taking place and how rapidly agriculture is changing in the world, there is a place for the farm. And if we could tap into those new technology, I believe in the next 5 to 6 years, 10 years, we will have a very successful farm.
Great news there. Good way to segue. We will be right back with some more innovations from the South Louis Community College. Please stay tuned.
Are you looking to broaden your career opportunities? Future-proof your career with a bachelor's degree from the South Louis Community College. We've introduced new cutting-edge degree programs in environmental studies and sustainability, tourism and hospitality, business administration, and public health. Online platforms are making it easier than ever before to further your education and mask your competitive advantage. This is the game changer you've been waiting for. Get the highest return on your investment in the OECS from the college you trust. Visit salcc.edu.lc. Apply today for September 2021.
Thank you for staying with us. You are tuned in to the SALCC Informational Hour, and we are joined today by Principal President Dr. Keith Nurse and Technical Officer from the SALCC Farm, Mr. St. George James, who just gave us a complete rundown of all of the projects of the farm and some of the innovations that are taking place. There are some exciting times ahead for us in terms of our food security and the inclusion of technology in farming. And Principal and St. James referred to the farm as an innovation lab, and I know there are several more innovations that are happening at the college, so we will go back to Dr. Nurse to speak to another innovation lab that he has plans for.
Yes, in fact we're calling it an innovation hub because we have several labs that are being not just thought about but actually to be implemented. So the first off is the environmental lab, because we've already received some of the equipment through the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, thanks to the St. Lucia Conservation Fund. So we have that in place, and in fact we are working with CAFA to build that out, because on our campus we already have the largest environmental lab in the OECS, and so the goal is to generate some collaboration between the college and CAFA in this area. The next lab that looks like it's going to come off next would be a media tech lab, where we'll be doing a range of things, from app development, but also things like 3D printing, possibly some robotics as well. So we're getting some equipment for that through some general support from Arizona State University. We're doing a lot of collaboration with them, and one of our former students is a professor there, so the collaboration is having a diasporic dimension to it. Then we are setting up a lab that focuses on agrotech areas, and so this is where agriculture is no longer just about what happens on the farm. The approach we are adopting is a value chain one, or a value addition approach, so that the farm has a particular role, but then we'll set up an agrotech farm lab. And also we're focusing increasingly on agro-processing as well. So we're developing a facility for that. Plus, we've had recent discussions with IICA, which is the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, about establishing a fab lab. So this would be another dimension where you build out some of the small equipment that would be involved both in agro-processing, but also in manufacturing. So it's not just agriculture in the classic sense, it's now stretching out into manufacturing. And then the other lab that is coming on board is that the college has been selected to establish a virtual reality lab through the South Korea World Bank Fund. And so the college would be the repository of both the skills and talent and the equipment to service the wider OECS region and possibly even beyond that. Because the way that the VR lab would work would be to generate intense training and capabilities in specific areas. So for example, we're thinking of a number of areas, whether it's the blue economy or even the health-related and wellness economy, where deep learning skills are required so that these skills can be generated from one location and disseminated to multiple locations utilizing the virtual reality technologies. So when you add up all of these labs, we are housing it under one broad umbrella called the Innovation Hub. And so that will be a game changer, because what it would mean is that the college, which is pivoting quickly to a university, would become a technological university. And that would actually set us apart and give us some competitive advantage in the OECS and in the Southern Caribbean. So we are very proud of that, and the goal is to also then now strengthen the linkage between both our training, our research, including field research on the farm, what we do at the Innovation Hub. So it's a virtual circle. And we want to take it even further because we have a restaurant and a hospitality program. So it includes now farm to table elements. And then lastly, we are considering running a farmer's market at the college on the weekend. So we will be retailing some of our produce as well as some of the very interesting agro-processed and other products that are being generated here in St. Lucia. So all of this is actually now in multiple stages of development, but they are coming into fast fruition.
Sounds very exciting. How does that tie in, the Innovation Hub, to the Gateways program that the college has developed over the last year?
Yes, well, in fact, we have a cohort of, let's call them participants, because not all of them are students. In fact, we have several people who've come on board to the Gateways in Global Careers that are either past students or not. Someone, I think one young man was just finishing up his CSEC. So he's, out of the blocks very early in his entrepreneurial journey.
Ahead of the game.
Yes. And I think one member is also a staff member who's participating. And the way it works is this, is that we put them through a process of immersive learning in some critical areas. Well, in fact, it's critical thinking skills, design thinking skills, how to develop a business plan, feasibility study, how to understand what's happening in the global economy in terms of the key sectors. And we have facilitators from Harvard University, from Arizona State University, and so on. So high-level expertise that are being brought to bear on what is on offer. The goal is now to in effect, use the experience for the last few months to run a number of these gateway programs in new areas. So for in fact, we're under discussions to talk about running a gateways program for agri-entrepreneurship. But we could do it in other areas as well, whether it be fintech, cyber tech, creative industries, animation, modern languages. It really doesn't matter, because in many respects, the goal is to flip the learning process from the traditional mooring of being in a classroom where the learners are passive learners We want to shift towards active learning, dynamic learning, learning by doing. And so this is where I think the college would also make a really important contribution to the educational paradigm in this part of the world. So the Gateways program is very much linked into the Innovation Hub, because the participants in that program will have access to 3D printers, robotics, learning how to develop an app, the best environmental technologies, equipment in this part of the world, etc., etc. So the opportunities in the next academic year and beyond are nothing short of being tremendous.
Great. And it sounds like you were really opening up so that it spans several different areas and it's not limited to one particular area. I am hearing the same thing happening with the offerings as the college expands. Could you speak, in as much as we advertised it earlier, could you speak now to the expansion of the offerings, not just in terms of content, but also in terms of the qualification? So traditionally we were an associate degree granting institution, but that is changing. Can you tell the public a little more about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the community college model is very much premised on generating associate degrees in key areas, as well as in general areas. That's very much an American model. And that model works well where you have a lot of universities surrounding the community colleges.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yes.
So
That's
if you have a community college on an island where the nearest university is on another island or even further afield, then the cost of going to university becomes prohibitive. And so what the government of St. Lucia has decided to do, and this is for a number of years now, in fact, if you go back, there have been discussions about setting up a university for at least 20 years.
Yes.
So I've been hired to, as the minister keeps saying, land the plane, right? The plane is running out of fuel, right? The passengers are getting a little bit antsy. Land this plane. So if you read the manifestos, I know it's a political season again, but if you look at the manifesto for the current government, the previous government, and the one before that, and the one before that, the idea of a university has always been on the cards. So irrespective of where you are in the political spectrum, this is something that unifies the nation. So what are we doing? We have introduced 4 new bachelor's degrees to add to the 2 that we have already had. We have one in a bachelor's of nursing, which came on stream this academic year, and a bachelor's in teacher ed. And those have done really well. And in fact, those can be defined as our flagships. Now what we are doing is extending into areas where we have some level of competence. So our business program is fairly well developed. And so we now have a BA in business administration and innovation. So it's not your standard or classic business administration program. We have added this other dimension where students are learning about how innovation happens, how it's deployed, etc., diffusion, etc. Then we have a BA in tourism and hospitality and sustainability, very much in keeping with what's happening, and it's the main driver of the economy in St. Lucia and elsewhere in the region. A BA in public health, which we are super excited about, especially with the context of COVID. I mean, I think we've all come to accept that public health is really important. And last but not least, a BA in environmental studies and sustainability. Again, one can't begin to think how important this is with climate change, volcanoes, you name it. The region is a disaster-prone region. And so we do need to think more critically about how we deploy our natural assets and resources to sustain human as well as other species on the planet.
Great. So that expansion, I know our time is coming up, Principal, but there were several other initiatives that happened this past year that I wonder if it will continue. One, for example, is the Diplomacy Academy. Is that something that the college is? Can you tell us first what it was about and whether people will be able to access it again in the next academic period.
Yeah. You know, if you read Arthur Lewis, back in 1969, he talked about lifelong learning and adult learning as being the biggest area for growth, which was underinvested in. So at the college, our primary target market has been school leavers, historically. And what we're doing in the last, or what we've done in the last year, is pivot towards targeting lifelong learning. So we have a dean for lifelong learning. And we've also started to target what we call academies, which are for professional and executive learning. So the first area, which is, we had an academy for diplomacy and sustainable development, which was done in conjunction with the Ministry of External Affairs, and very much thanks to the ambassador in Taiwan, the Indonesian ambassador in Taiwan. We put together a very interesting month-long training program of lectures where we had facilitators from as far away as Fiji, Taiwan, Sri Lanka, London, Belgium. One person was from Nigeria, and so on and so forth. And then we had participants from all around the world. We had over close to 120 participants with people as far away as New Zealand or Australia. So the new technologies, which have been around for a little while now, but in COVID context, it actually allowed us to really target an audience beyond just the Caribbean and so on. So that has done fairly well. We have 2 other academies, well 3 actually, in the making. Well, our e-learning academy has actually been in operation and is one of the biggest providers of online learning and training for teachers in the region, particularly in the Southern Caribbean. So we've been getting teachers from as far away as St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, and other parts of the OECS. And we are working in the next couple of months with Haiti as well. Then we have an upskilling academy, which we have under discussions with one of the ministries here. And as well, the private sector is interested. And so this is another critical area. And the last academy that we're working on is one on digital and creative economy, which is one of my pet areas of research, of course. But as you could see, as a result of COVID, the huge demand for online content, both film, music, and otherwise. And so this is a tremendous growth area, which the college is going to be jumping on to develop skills and capabilities, both in St. Lucia and abroad.
Great. I think that you have already summed up everything that people want to hear, the excitement that is coming from the South Lewis Community College and what they can look forward to. And like you said, it's ongoing. We are in a summer period, but the college remains open. We continue to work, very little time off, because we are running with everything that the principal has brought to the college over the last year and a half. Is it 2 years yet, Principal? That
no, it's only a year and a half.
It seems like 5.
If you could only believe it.
So definitely a lot happening. I really want to thank you two gentlemen for being here this afternoon. St. George James, Technical Officer of the farm. It was really great hearing the work that is happening at the farm, and we look forward to any new developments for us to come here, right here at NTN, to bring that information to the public. So thank you so much for being here, and as usual, thank you, Dr. Nurse, for bringing us through Unthink. We are still unthinking.
Yes.
That is very important. It's a movement now for us to see change in our nation. Thank you so much for being with us here this afternoon. This is our final program for our academic year. We will continue in the new academic year to bring you news from the South Lewis Community College. Please continue to follow us on our social media pages and look for information on our website at salcc.edu.lc. Continue to follow all protocols and stay safe. The pandemic is still on, and we will do all we can to win this war. Continue to stay safe and stay tuned to the South Lewis Community College. Have a great evening.
The future is ever-changing. Communities, jobs, and economies are continually being transformed. This is why we need incredible minds to connect problems with innovative solutions, to disrupt and create new industries, to enable businesses to think sustainably, to shape evidence-based leaders and the next generation of visionaries. SALCC helps you to shape your career. Your passion is calling. Your future is standing by. Tap into your potential. Virtual and on-site classes, dedicated faculty, diverse student experiences, and highly recognized programs. Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. Apply today and fast-track your career.